This is a new interview series we're rolling with, kind of under unique circumstances. Given that everyone is kind of in self-isolation, self-quarantine, we thought what better way to kind of help connect you with some of the people that make some of your favorite things than through a live video interview series. And our first guest is none other than Michael Giacchino. Michael, thank you so much for joining us today.
Happy to be here. Absolutely.
Michael is, obviously well-renowned Oscar-winning composer, responsible for, Jurassic World, War for the Planet of the Apes, a million Pixar movies. Everything he does is basically brilliant. And now he has a new short film that he wrote, produced, directed, and scored called Monster Challenge. That is now online and available to watch on YouTube for free. A little bit of some fun entertainment in these trying times. So, Michael, why don't you talk a little bit about just kind of your decision to put the short online and kind of where this short came from?
Well, I've been making movies since I was a kid. When I was a little kid, 9 years old, I started making movies with my dad's 8mm camera. So most of my childhood was probably spent either in the basement making stop motion films or out in the backyard making, lightsaber fights and different movies, recreating E.T. or Raiders of the Lost Ark with my friends. And we made tons of movies. That's literally all I did growing up. And then I went to film school, and music was not the thing I thought I'd be doing, but I love it. It's been great. But I got to this point where I was like, I really miss making movies. So I called my friend Patton Oswalt, and I was like, Patton, because we had worked together on Ratatouille. That's where we met. I was like, Patton, I have this really dumb idea for a short I want to direct. What do you think? And I pitched him the idea, and he was just like, let's do it. So, him, and then it's basically all my friends. Like everyone in that show is friends of mine, that I worked on or met through different productions. Amy Brenneman, our kids went to school together. Of course, her husband is Brad Silberling, who I've worked with on Land of the Lost, and I've been friends with him for a long time. So it was I just went out to all my friends, Ben Schwartz, everybody. It was just like, guys want to do this? And they were just like, sure, let's do it. So we did it. We shot it over 3 days, which was insane to get this kind of thing done in 3 days, but we did it. And, my friend at Bad Robot, Josh Tate, he produced it. And it was just like it was literally, I just wanted to have that feeling of, when you were a kid and you could just do anything. You were like, let's just go outside and do this. And that's what we did. We just said, let's just go outside and do this and make it just because it'll be fun to do. There was no other ulterior motive behind it. It was just a fun thing to do, and just because I just missed being on set or being with people making things. I'm stuck here in this room most of the time writing. So I rarely get to communicate in that way.
Well, it's super fun. And if you haven't seen the short yet, Patton Oswalt essentially plays a version of himself, and he gets roped into this Japanese game show where he's playing a kaiju, and he's, a monster. And there are a couple of surprises I won't spoil, but where specifically did that idea come from? The Japanese game show and then kind of the kaiju movies?
I love I love monster movies. Absolutely love them. Ray Harryhausen, Willis O'Brien, these guys are like heroes of mine. So there's that. And then there's the side of me that also loves Japanese game shows, which are insane and crazy and so much fun to watch. And I thought, wouldn't it be cool to have this is before I even thought about making this into a film. I thought it'd just be fun to have a Japanese game show where you had to dress up like a Godzilla or something like that, some sort of monster, and for points, see how much of the city you can destroy before the contestants who are playing against you, shoot you down with tranquilizer darts. And, knowing that would never be a real game, I thought, that it just sort of sparked the whole thing. And I thought, why don't we make this into a short film? And then I just was talking to Patton, and I thought, oh my God, he'd be perfect for this. And that's just how it happened. And I just wrote it out. And of course, Patton, Ben Schwartz, Benedict Wong, all these guys, Amy, they're Dermot Mulroney, they're so good at what they do, and they're great at improv. So it was fun to just have a skeleton of a script, which had everything I knew we needed to do. And they had certain lines they had to remember, this and that, but a lot of it was them just riffing on each other. And especially you put Patton and Ben together, it's just
Yeah.
like you never know what you're going to get. And we would do a bunch of takes and just pull all the most fun stuff. I mean, there's a lot of other stuff we have that just sits on the floor now, but it would have made the whole thing too long, you know. So
that's funny. That's what I was going to ask, because I mean, Ben obviously is this, you know, world-renowned improviser. I mean, he improvises entire stage shows with Thomas Middleditch. So
yes.
what is it like getting him on set and just kind of winding him up and letting him go?
Oh, it's the best. Like, you just give him the setup, just give him sort of like any important thing that you have to, that you know you need to hit, any story details, anything like that. You just give him all that. He'll just take it all in, and then he'll just like, it just all comes out of him, and every take is great, and you're just like, why? It's sort of frustrating in a way, because you know you can't use them all.
Yeah.
But it becomes this thing where you're like choosing, and then you're sitting there in the editing room, and my editor, Matt Evans, and I would just sit there. We'd watch every single one and be like, I don't know, they're all good. Which one do we use? You know.
Yeah.
Essentially, you gotta make a choice. But he and Patton are both so smart about that, and so good at. You throw something at them, they will throw something at you right back instantly. You know, there's like no delay. They just come out with something. And I don't know how they do it, but thank God they do it, because it's so fun to watch.
Well, you said you made a lot of movies as a kid. You've now worked with like some of the best directors in the world. So what was it like stepping on set and now having that experience working with those filmmakers? Was there any like major pieces of advice or anything that stuck with you, or that like, oh, that's something that I actually really needed to know?
Well, the one thing that was interesting is in scoring the thing was I'm used to this relationship between my friends that when I work with them on films, and there's a great back and forth, you know, and we have this full 100% honesty clause in our relationship, which is no matter what, always say what you think. And that goes, I can say it to them, they can say it to me. You know, I may comment on the edit or the script or whatever. They can comment on music, anything I'm doing. So we just put all of that out there, and there's no ego involved. So I didn't really have that relationship on this film, because I was directing and scoring. So there was a couple moments where I would score things, and I'd be like, okay, that's great, it's done. But then when I would see it back later, I thought, oh God, what was I thinking? I didn't really, you know, I didn't necessarily have my director hat on while I was scoring. I just had my composer hat on, you know? And so that was an interesting thing to learn if I continue doing this with myself, to be a little bit more, you know, take the spot of the director while I'm writing music for it, because you have to step away, and, you know, that sort of separation is so important. So it helps me, and I know it helps. Even just having someone in the room when I'm playing back cues for them, you know, if JJ is sitting behind me, or Brad Bird or anyone, it's just great to have them in the room, because it forces you to look at the thing differently. And I didn't have that on this. So a couple of cues I had to go back and readjust, because I didn't realize that until afterwards. But that was definitely a learning experience. But being on set was fun. I felt like I just went right back to being a kid again, and doing that. And the crew was incredible. I mean, again, I had so many favors from friends from all over who came and helped out to do this. A lot of people from Bad Robot, and actually they helped. They let me borrow equipment and all of this. And so it was really a group effort. And I'm so thankful that they let me, you know, trusted me with their equipment and things like that, and their time. You know, people put in a lot of time on this. Amelia, you know, who was the production designer. I mean, you know, Amelia Brooke she built that entire set, her and a bunch of her friends. It was incredible, you know. And I didn't even think about it. I remember going on that set the first day and going, oh my God, yeah, we're really making something here. This is crazy, you know, because you're so deep in making sure all the details and everyone is going to be there. Once you walk on set and see the game show thing, and going to see the costumes and all of that, was like, whoa, this is real. This is actually happening. It was fun.
Well, it's also a pretty complicated film. I mean, you've got a pretty big action set piece in the middle there, with special effects, with visual effects. What was that like kind of in the editing room, putting that together?
It was tough. There was a 25-minute cut of this film at one point, and it was just too long. You know, like when you say a short film, I think there people expect it to be, you know, in the 10-minute range. And if it's not, you know, it better be damn good, or else it's not gonna, people will just check out. So the editing room with Matt and I, it was like process of cutting down, getting more, just keep losing all the things, a lot of which we loved. But everything you lost made it stronger and better. And I don't miss, and I couldn't even tell you the things that we left behind at this point. All I know now is what we have there. It probably could be cut down a little bit more if we wanted to, but there's sometimes you're just like, I'll leave that in. It's funny. But it's one of the most fun things was the costume thing, and getting Patton and Ben fitted for those costumes. There's a company in Van Nuys. I don't know if you saw a commercial. It was like I guess it's an insurance commercial or something. They recreated the Gorn suit from Star Trek, series, where Kirk is out in the desert fighting this guy. So they had to recreate this Gorn suit for this commercial. And I saw that commercial and I was like, who did that? Who made that thing? And it was this guy, Ken, at this company called Total Fabrications, which, and they're in Van Nuys and they've been there forever, like for, I don't know, 35 years or something. Ken Hall is his name. And we went over, I called him, went over to his shop, saw all his stuff. And he made these incredible costumes. And so I said, do you think you could do something? I showed him the script and I had drawn some really rough designs. And he was like, yeah. And he made those costumes for us. I mean, it was incredible. And it was really funny too. At some point I'll put up some back behind the scenes shots of the fittings and everything, Patton getting fit in for the suit and Ben getting measured and all that. It was quite a fun process.
Do you have the bug now? Are you itching to kind of direct something else again?
Yeah, definitely. I would love to. And I'm working on a couple things that I have, that I'm looking at doing next. Some big, some smaller. And, it's interesting because this whole time now where everything is sort of shut down and everyone is like at home, it really, obviously, first thing, make sure you're safe, make sure everyone is safe around you and all of that. And then once you do that, you start sitting around going, well, what am I going to do? I don't really have any movies to score this year, so I'm just sort of getting my head back together and going, okay, what do I want to do now? What do I, and I have about 4 or 5 things that I'm looking at doing. So hopefully soon, yes, I will be doing it again.
That's fantastic. To segue a little bit, I kind of want to talk about your film composition work, just because, I mean, the library is huge. We could spend 4 hours talking about it, but I'll try not to take that much of your time. Sure. I'm curious, though, I mean, you come from the world of video games where, you may or may not be working with kind of existing themes, existing material, and you've also gone on to work on these major franchises like Jurassic Park and, Star Trek and Planet of the Apes, where themes exist. And so I'm wondering for you, what's kind of your process as a composer, like where you may feel an obligation to at least address or even maybe use some of that music and kind of put it in a different way while also creating a score that is original?
Well, I'll tell you, if I'm working on something that has something pre-existing, especially something like Star Trek has a lot of pre-existing music, but I sort of just focused it on Alexander Carriage's theme, the original one. I thought, well, if we're going to use anything, it would have to be that. And you have to also then think about, well, how do we use it and where do we use it? Because if you overuse something, it's very easy to take a theme that is so well known and just slam it in everywhere. It's great fan service. It gets the heart pumping, but it doesn't always necessarily help the storytelling, and it can be something that if you do too much, it actually hurts the film, I think, rather than help it. So in the case of Star Trek, it was always about talking about, well, where are we going to use this theme? And JJ and I went back and forth with that for months, as we were working on the film. And in the end, it really came down to, let's just save it for the ending as a big celebration of what Star Trek is to us and what we love about it. And let's make the biggest version of it we can, and let's intertwine it with our new theme and just go and have some fun with it. So we ended up doing that. Now, that's Star Trek. On something like Star Wars, like Rogue One, it's different. You again, my point of view is to be very careful with those things and only use exactly what you need when you need it, because it's like telling the same joke over and over again. If you play that card too many times, it doesn't have any impact anymore. Yeah. So I could easily sit there and just have played, the Force theme all the time throughout the whole thing. And maybe the first time, the second time would have been, but by the end of the film, it wouldn't have been as impactful. So it was about, let's save it for when we really want to hear it. Less is more, So I'm always trying to be very careful about how I use those themes. And not because I don't want to, because I love that stuff. I obviously grew up, I love Star Wars, and I love Star Trek and all the music that comes along with it. But I also want to do what's right for the story that the filmmaker is making, as opposed to just, regurgitating something that has been around for a while. I tend to be very careful with those things. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Well, you talk about Rogue One. That was a unique case, right? I mean, you had very little time to work, so you easily could have used it as a crutch.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It could have been with the kind of thing where I could have just grabbed every cue that had been in those movies before and just done that. But that wouldn't have been right to do, and it wouldn't have been good for the story. It wouldn't have been good for the overall movie. It wouldn't have, I always want to make sure that I am hand in hand with the storytelling of the film. When I first started working on Incredibles with Brad Bird, he, one of the things he said to me early on, he goes, "Now listen to me." He said, "Your music could ruin my movie." And I was just like, "Well, what do you mean?" He goes, "If we're not hand in hand the entire time, making sure that the music is a reflection of the story, the audience is going to start thinking and feeling things we don't want them to think or feel. So we have to be very careful about that." And that was, a long time ago he told me that, but I have never forgotten that. And it's so true. You have to be, music is a dangerous, dangerous weapon in a film, because it can easily get you thinking about something that you shouldn't be thinking about if you're not doing it right. So you got to stay very in tune with the story and what that filmmaker wants to tell, the ideas that they're trying to get across. And it really is sort of one of the ultimate partnerships in filmmaking process. Because Brad's right, the music can ruin the movie, and you gotta be on top of that.
Well, I mean, your work at Pixar is incredible. But you've worked with Pixar for a really long time. And I think The Incredibles was your first time, right? And
yes.
You just did Incredibles 2, and you've done Coco, Ratatouille. And Pixar is kind of this place where a lot of people look to as kind of this storytelling mecca. I know, a lot of people go there to kind of get input on scripts or input on movies. What's kind of been your experience through that time? Like, has Pixar changed very much throughout that time, or is it still kind of this really kind of gold mine of really interesting approaches to storytelling?
Well, I certainly think they have some of the most talented people in the world working there. That's for sure. And grow, I think anything that is as successful as something like Pixar, it's very difficult to maintain that, because you're not only looking at what you're making next, but you're looking in the rearview mirror of what you made, thinking, I got to make something as good as those things behind me, and that becomes hard. Whereas when you're young and scrappy, you're just out there making your best thing, and you're just throwing it out there one after the other, not even thinking about it. But as some time passes, you start looking back going, wow, and now what's exciting to me at Pixar is this whole new group of people getting a chance to tell stories there. And I feel like for the first time since the beginning of the studio, we're going to see some energy that feels like a bunch of people wanting to just get out there and do their first chance, do their first time. They haven't directed, 4 other movies there. They haven't not even directed one. They're excited to get this off the ground and see what they can do. So I think this next phase for them is going to be really, really interesting, And of course, you got someone like Pete Docter, who is making, his films. His films are always so unique and different and so artistic and
emotionally devastating.
Yeah, yes, that too. Yes, that too. And so, you have these masters like Pete, and then you have this whole group of young people who are just raring to get out there and kick some butt. And so I think it's kind of fun to watch.
For sure. Yeah, I really can't wait to see what they're doing next. Mm-hmm. Speaking of themes, I'd be remiss if I didn't point out the Mission Impossible franchise, which, it's been going on for so long, and pound for pound, it's one of, if not like one of the most consistently good franchises still going. And you had the pleasure of working on 2 of those films with 2 different filmmakers. I was wondering kind of what your experience was working on those films. And then again, that theme is so iconic and would just take over the entire movie. I
think that theme is one of the few melodies in existence that you can never tire of. you know. And if anything were to speak against what I was saying before in terms of, being careful when you use something, do this. I think the Mission Impossible thing you can pretty much use anywhere, and it's really exciting. It works, and you just have fun. It just goes. I just love it. Lalo Schifrin, just one of the greatest composers, a massive hero of mine. Obviously, I love him. When I was working on the very first movie with JJ, Mission Impossible 3, I called Lalo up and I asked him if he would mind having lunch with me. So we went to lunch, and I was really nervous about this because I had not met him before. I was really, just starting out at the time, basically. And I just wanted to ask him, what should I do? What shouldn't I do? I don't want to mess up your music. What do you, this and that? And I remember he just looked at me. He's like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, well, I don't want to do any. He goes, and he just cut me off, and he was like, just have fun with it. And I was like, really? That's it? And he goes, yeah, just have fun with it. And I was like, yeah, okay, I could do that. And I did. I just went crazy with it. I tried to use it in every single, time signature I could. I just had a lot of fun with that. And I became great friends with him over the years, which was a really fun and a crazy gift that I never thought ever that I'd be friends with Lalo Schifrin. I mean, but what a wonderful guy, and obviously, again, who wrote one of the greatest themes in film and TV and now film history. So
yeah,
crazy.
And your variation on it in Ghost Protocol is so much fun.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, that was fun to do that film. There, doing that second one, I thought, well, now what do I do? It's a whole different, but Brad's style is so different from JJ's style. I was like, oh, this is a completely different kind of movie, which was equally as challenging as doing number 3, and also equally as fun. And there's some really incredibly funny moments in that film, which I love the humor that he brought to the whole story. It was great. Brad's great.
For sure. Are you guys working on a musical? Is that what I think Brad said you guys were going to put together a musical?
We are working on a musical. He outed us in some interview somewhere.
And you were very happy to have everyone know that you're in the very early stages of writing a musical.
Yeah. So it's like, what do you say? He's like, well, I don't know. We are, right? I'm like, yeah, we are. So yeah, we are. We are in the early stages of doing that and working on, okay, what is this thing going to be? What's it going to sound like? Let's come up with at least one idea that we can start bouncing around and seeing how we feel about it. So that's where we are. It is still early stages, but the idea is great, and it's pure Brad Bird, and it's just really fun and emotional and exciting and silly and all those great things you expect from his movies. So I'm looking forward to that. That I don't know when it's coming out or what but yeah, we're working on it.
Awesome. Well, I mean, you've also recently been putting your stamp on kind of the Marvel universe, which I think is really kind of coming into its own with these really unique and fun music competitions, specifically like, Doctor Strange, what Mark did with Thor Ragnarok. Yeah. I really loved, and obviously your Spider-Man films. What was it kind of like working in kind of the Marvel mold and then getting to play with a hero like Peter Parker?
Oh, you know what? I remember, I had been asked many times over the years to do one of those movies, and I was either busy on other things or I felt like, I remember, something. It's hard for me, I look at something like The Avengers. There's so many main characters in there. I'm like, I don't even know what to do there because I want to write a theme for everyone. But I remember when Kevin came to me and asked me about Doctor Strange, I was like, yes, because I love a movie, especially a superhero movie that is about a character. It doesn't mean there can't be other people in and out of it, but I love it when it's really focused on a person. And I also loved Doctor Strange as a kid. I had a bunch of those comics, which is weird because it's one of the ones that a lot of people didn't know about or didn't he wasn't like one of the main most popular ones, but I loved it. And so I remember going in there and just being like, yes, I will definitely do this. And the thing about Kevin's incredible to work with because Kevin is like your next door neighbor when you were a kid, and come over to your house with a stack of comics and you go through them, and he knows every single thing about every one of those characters. He knows that universe so well, and and it shows when you look at the expanse of films that they have done under his sort of guidance. It's amazing to see how he held it all together. I mean, obviously they have amazing directors and writers and all of that. Kevin is the overlord of it all, and he knows he's not just an exec. He knows and loves that material as much as we do. So that was one of the biggest joys in getting to know Kevin, was just seeing how much he really truly loves this stuff. And then learning what a massive Star Trek and Star Wars fan he is as well. It's just so funny. The more we got to know each other, I was like, wow, you're basically me and all of us in this geekdom world that love all this stuff. We're all, he's very much one of all of us, and it's just a good guy, and nice people too. I mean, Victoria Alonso over there, Lou Esposito, the people that run the whole thing, they're just good people, So anytime I get to work with them, I'm thrilled and happy.
Are you going to be working with them again on the new Spider-Man film?
I mean, that's a little ways off. It hasn't been announced, but I don't know. We'll see. But sure. Yes, I mean, all of those fun things that you can and can't say.
I get it. Well,
but a Spider-Man film is being made.
Yes.
So that's that.
Well, one thing I think that has been reported that I think we can talk about is you're doing the next Jurassic film, the next Jurassic World film with Colin. Yes. But I was kind of curious. I mean, again, talk about following in the footsteps of a hero, John Williams, again, with an iconic theme. Talk about kind of working with that on the first two films, and maybe kind of what, I mean, I'm sure it's early days, but, what you guys are kind of talking about for this third one.
Yeah. Well, there's still we haven't talked too much about this, first one. I mean, they literally just started shooting and got shut down, and so everyone's like home now. So I'm not sure how that's going to affect everything, but it'll get made. But in talking to Colin, I remember on the first film, and he felt very much as I felt, with all of this, which was, look, we're making our, Jurassic. We're not remaking someone else's. We're doing ours. So we need new themes. We need new ideas, and it doesn't mean we want to forget the old stuff. We want to use that, but we want to be very careful when we use it. So he was very much in agreement with me in terms of how we approach the use of older material, the stuff that John did, which is, some of the greatest music ever written. And it's always a gift to be able to sit there and go, oh, I get to actually play around with this thing that I grew up listening to and loving so much. And that means so much to the world, which is the other thing you got to be careful with, because everyone gets up in arms about any little thing you change or do. But, that it is what it is. But we really do respect it so much, and we love it. And keeping his music alive in the material that we're creating is important to us, but doing it in the right way. So we're not just, cutting and pasting it. That's my nightmare, that's the way it would be. I want to integrate it so it feels as though it's part of the whole. It belongs to the tapestry that we're creating for this particular film. Now, the second one was also a great example of somewhere, where we were able to use a bit of the old stuff, and we did when it made sense. But now we had all the material I did for the first one, which carried into the new character. So we used a lot of that, but then also we got to do the Indoraptor theme, which was a whole different thing as well. So I do think when you're making these films, even if they are franchises or sequels, I think it's so important to inject new ideas and new material into what you're doing. Or else it's just, I wouldn't want to watch it if it was just sort of a retread of everything else. So I am always going in there and going, what would I want to see? If knowing that this is a brand new chapter in the Jurassic Park sort of line of stories, what would I want to see, or what would I want to hear? And we very much approach it from that point of view. It's not about like, well, what will make people happy? It's about like, what will make us happy? What will make us as filmmakers happy? What would make us as artists happy to do? You can't ignore what came before, and we don't want to either. But we want to just make sure, again, we use it right, and give people something new, a new experience, mixed with a little bit of the nostalgia that you love from the previous ones.
Yeah. Yeah, trusting that like you yourself are a fan and therefore you will create something that hopefully fans will like, but
Yeah.
not trying to anticipate exactly what they want.
Yeah, yeah. Because when I think about, Raiders of the Lost Ark is my absolute favorite movie in the world. I love that film. And I think about, Stephen and George at that time when they were making those movies, they were inspired by so much that came before in making those films, but they didn't just retread what came before. They took that inspiration and they went in this direction with it and created something new. And I feel like that should be our journey as well. We get to have that same journey as well, where we're inspired by something that came before and take it into a different direction. So all those films we grew up with, if you talk to all those directors, and so many of them I've been lucky enough to work with and get to know over the years, they're always talking about, the things that inspired them. Oh, well, I loved, serials from the 30s, and that's why I wanted to do this. Or even Flash Gordon for, Star Wars. He was sort of taking those things and jumping off into a different realm with them. So as much as we can do that with a film that has a 2 or a 3 or a 4 behind it, I think it's important for us to try and do that.
Well, and to that end, I think, one of the best examples and one of the most successful in recent memory is Matt Reeves' Apes films. And your score on those movies, especially War for the Planet of the Apes, that's one of the best scores of the century so far, I think. And you guys just really dug deep and created something new and fresh. I was wondering if you could kind of talk about, I know you've worked with Matt for a long time, but what was kind of the collaboration process on those films specifically?
I love working with Matt. Because Matt, I think people always ask me, what's your favorite thing you've ever worked on? And I don't really have a favorite, but if I think about like music, what did I enjoy most? I enjoyed a lot of it, but I think that if I look at something like Lost, I look at Lost and I go, oh, Lost was something where there was no template for it, and I got to do whatever I wanted to do, So that usually is the thing I think about when people ask me that. Matt is very much into just, me doing me and then seeing where it goes, in the way that I was able to do on Lost. A lot of times you're in a little bit of a lane that you have to keep in when you're creating something for certain types of movies. And while there was a little bit of a lane for Apes, there was no real theme that has been around for Apes. There was a sort of a sonic sort of template for it that Jerry Goldsmith created, which, by the way, is one of the greatest movie scores ever done with the original Planet of the Apes by Jerry. So there's that, but there was no necessarily theme. So we were able to. I felt such freedom to do whatever I wanted within Matt's story. And Matt loves sort of modernism, and he loves like these crazy textures and repeated phrases and things like that, which I do too. Like I love that building tension that can happen with something when you just let it keep going over and over, and maybe let it get bigger and bigger. And those kinds of things are really fun to play around with. And on Apes, we were able to do that, and also do very melodic moments where it felt very emotional and it felt very empathetic. I feel like, I don't know how he did it. The apes in those movies, Andy Serkis and everyone at Weta, the work done on the Apes movies is some of the most incredible effects work I've ever seen. And I would sit here writing at my desk, and I'd be staring at the screen, and I would just keep going back and forth on some of the shots, because I was like, how is that not a real ape? That makes no sense. Yeah. That's like a real, they've sort of crossed that Rubicon now and have, where you're just like, you're just accepting that that's a real thing on screen. So musically, it was just always about, digging into the emotional aspect of the story, which is what composing always is for me. It's always about translating how I feel about something into music for the film.
And it's just incredible. And, now is where I ask you about the Batman. And I know you can't say very much about the Batman, but we are in a unique position in that we have heard some of your music for the Batman already.
Right.
What can you kind of tease about? And that's a franchise that doesn't have, you have different themes over the years, but very tonally different films. So you're kind of, was it kind of like Apes where you could kind of have the freedom to? Exactly.
I felt total freedom to do whatever I wanted. Matt always, this is our Batman. This is our version, in the same way. What I loved about, and I still do about Batman comics and graphic novels is that, each of these artists, each of these authors, they take their own crack at what they want this version to be. It's their version of Batman, so I love it when I see like Batman in a graphic novel of Batman in the 1800s. Like, to me, that is cool. Like, I love that.
Yeah.
And I'm not the kind of person that says, no, Batman must always be this. It's like, well, no, why? It can be whatever the artist wants it to be. And it has over the years done that many times over, so I love the idea of taking something and just kind of doing our version of it, And I remember when Matt and I have been talking about this for a long time, Batman, obviously. And, last year after reading the script, I remember just sitting down and going, oh, I have an idea. And I sat down and I wrote that piece that is in the teaser trailer. And Matt has had that, it was just like a demo version of it, a mock-up. It wasn't even, done with the orchestra or anything. And so then he had been using that in every single one of his presentations at Warner Brothers. He would put it behind every, like, all right, these are the costumes, you hear that music, here's the thing, you hear the music, the thing. So when it came time to release the thing, he was just like, well, we have to put it with the music. We have to have, we can't put this out there without, and usually you don't get that chance. Usually you're, the music isn't written till way late in the game.
Yeah.
So all of the early marketing stuff is just, they'll take whatever. So, take whatever they can use, whatever fits. So this was a great opportunity to, like, from the get-go say, nope, this is our Batman, like it or not, this is what we're doing. And, and Matt and I love it. We watch it. We have a lot of fun with it, and which makes us like feel like kids again. And but I did go over and I recorded that for that, and we recorded a bunch of other music as well for it, as a lot of themes and things that nobody has heard yet. But they'll all be popping up as the film gets underway again and starts getting back into production and life gets back to normal, hopefully soon.
Yeah. I know Matt has said it's kind of a detective story. Can you tease kind of tonally this take on Batman?
Well, I think the only thing I'd be allowed to say is watch the teaser.
And that's what it is.
and then make your own decision on that at this. I don't need Warner Brothers knocking on my door. Probably in the middle of the interview, you'll see a red dot on my head, from some laser guidance system. So, yeah. That is, but I do love it. I think what he's doing is really cool, and it's different, and it feels fresh, in the way that I get excited when I see a new graphic novel or comic book coming out, with a new take on it. It feels like that, and Robert Pattinson is just a fantastic actor, and I'm thrilled to see him in it. Like, I feel like that is such a crazy great choice for Batman, and people will realize that once they see it. So in time,
it's incredible.
Yeah.
That is a unique position you're in, though. That, I mean, if you've recorded some music, I assume they're going to use those in the trailers and stuff, so they won't be using existing.
Yeah, but that's the plan. That's the plan that as we go forward, we keep it all unified and make it what it is. We're delivering on a promise that you'll get when you see the film. That's what we want. I don't want to suddenly be in a position where suddenly you're hearing music from I don't even know what. Pick anything and behind our thing, because it wouldn't be the right thing. So as much as we can do it, we will, and that's our intention. So we'll see how as we go forward.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, Michael, thank you so much for talking to us and talking to me.
Absolutely. Anytime. Happy to do it.
And congratulations again on Monster Challenge. You have such a love of these kinds of things. It really comes through in your music, comes through in that film, and I really hope we see more films from you as a writer, director going forward.
Yes, me too. I agree. I want to do that more. Hire me.
Well, thanks everybody for watching. This has been the very first installment of Collider Connected. Please go on YouTube to find Monster Challenge. You can also find it on Michael's Twitter. Check it out. We could all use a little joy right now, and it will bring you a lot of joy. So
yeah, everyone stay safe, stay home, and take care of your families.
Indeed. Thanks, everybody.
All right. Talk soon.
Bye.
Bye.